Hey, everybody, it's Mike from The Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition rate. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention The Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, check out the latest novel by well-known award-winning author Mia Motions. You Have No Time for Love, called Missing, an extraordinary relationship between two ordinary people based on real-life events that go through 4 countries, 2 strangers, and 1 target, where truth is an illusion and the ones you love be the first to go missing. Check out the book on Amazon and other retailers, available on all formats today. Also, The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on themikewagnershow.com and over 30 podcast platforms, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, along with Amazon, Audible, and Apple. Coming soon to Podbean, TuneIn, Buzzsprout, Pandora, and more. Heard worldwide on Geo7, Radio Public, Himalaya, Castbox, Shoutbox, and more. Take the Mike Wagner Show on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel, and follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with award-winning physician, speaker, and author, who is also known as the anesthesiologist to the stars, and he's also one of the most sought-after physicians, and he's been on a number of TV shows on ABC, CBS, Fox, and more. Also did his training at Stanford and UCLA, and also this gentleman has built a career attending to some of the most complex patients in the area and mainly the world, and he spent years on the front line of healthcare, treating adults and children with uncontrollable pain. And then he's got a book called Why Doctors Skip Breakfast, Wellness Tips to Reverse Aging, Treat Depression, and Get a Good Night's Sleep, and more as well, too. And why do doctors skip breakfast? I mean, I'm not a doctor. I can't afford to skip breakfast. But live, ladies and gentlemen, from the Plush Studios, where he just really a kid to the deep in the heart of Texas, where I hope you don't get shot at, by the way. How protected these guns are. Live and armed and ready to go, the award-winning Dr. Gregory Charlop. Dr. Gregory, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Mike, thanks for having me here. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you on as well, too. I feel like I'm the old Wild Wild West, although you've been in California for a number of years, and maybe we can bring the Wild Wild West back to California one day. Who knows?
Yeah, I tell you, I've moved all over California. I'm a Californian through and through, Southern, Northern, Bay Area, Orange County, LA, you name it. But now I'm here in Texas. I've got my cowboy hats. I'm gonna get some boots. I'm loving it so far.
And you got those spurs that jingle, jangle, jingle. Okay, I'm sorry. I try not to be a singer, thanks, but we're not here to sing and play cowboys and everything. So basically, you're an award-winning physician, speaker, author, and of course, known as the anesthesiologist to the stars, one of the most sought-after patients, which now in Texas, you've been in California for quite some time, and you've been on a number of TV shows. You also did some training in Stanford and UCLA, and also you have a book called Why Doctors Skip Breakfast, Wellness Tips to Reverse Aging, Treat Depression, and Get a Good Night's Sleep, and more. We'll talk about that and what foods keep you young, what makes you old, and how to fast properly, supplements, and everything. And before we get into all that, tell us how I first got started, Dr. Gregory.
Well, so I'm an anesthesiologist by training, and so I spend most of my professional time taking care of patients in the operating room, kids, babies, adults who need surgery. We also take care of people that have chronic pain. So a lot of people have pain either after surgery, or some people just have chronic pain problems. But I've always been passionate about wellness and general health. And I think the trouble with medicine these days, and I see this all the time, is that doctors are always out there and they're pushing pills and they're pushing drugs, and they're focused on little teeny things, not kind of your overall health. And my parents, it's funny, my parents love telling the story. I must have been maybe like 9 or 10 or something. And we were out at a birthday party, you ever go to those parties where it's like a skating rink or something, and you go skating and then you go to the party room afterwards.
Oh, yes. I mean, I have 4 kids, and
Yeah.
we've done that maybe more than 4 times, 8, 12, 16. I think I've lost count.
Yeah, so we go to the thing, we do our skating, we have a great time. We go to the party room and there's cake. And so everybody's like excited about the cake, but I refuse to eat the cake. And I'm like 9 or something. because I thought it was too unhealthy. And so, this is me as like a 9-year-old, and I guess it just kind of continued from there. So I've always been interested in diet and nutrition. And we eat tons of food during our life. I mean, truckloads and truckloads of food. And that stuff has an effect on us. And it has more of an effect on us than the pills or the other things that we often, deal with doctors.
Hmm. Uh-huh. And also too, we'll get to some of the foods that keep you young. We'll talk more about that. And what actually influenced you into becoming an anesthesiologist and where you are today?
Well, so the anesthesiologist actually happened because well, at first I thought I would become an emergency medicine doctor. I was thinking this when I was in college, and, like ER was out, that show, and it seemed like glamorous and exciting. And I wanted to go, there's a specialty called disaster medicine. And so I had this image of myself that I'd be parachuting into these disaster scenes, rescuing people. And then I did my emergency medicine rotation in medical school, because you have to rotate to different things. And I didn't like it at all. It was just not my speed. And one of the things I learned is that, we're all different. Our personalities are different. I'm the kind of person, I like to deal with one or two people at a time. I don't like a lot of stuff going on all over the place. So I don't like really chaotic environments. And emergency rooms, they were just, and I didn't even know this until I was there. It's like you learn things about yourself. Emergency rooms are just too chaotic. So then I checked different things, and I realized anesthesia was what I liked, because you have one person, you really focus on them. It's an important moment. For a lot of people, the surgery they're going into, it's one of the scariest things they'll do. And it felt good to be able to be with people during those times. And I think that's what really sold me on it.
Mhm. And you also partnered with the most elite plastic surgeons in the world as well, too. And maybe just tell us about some of that, and maybe some ventures and some rather interesting stories about that.
Well, so it turns out, so I was in the Bay Area for years, and I moved to Los Angeles, and I went straight to Beverly Hills, and I immediately started connecting with these top plastic surgeons. And I'll be honest with you, and I didn't know this before really moving there, but it turns out that the plastic surgery marketplace, it's very competitive. And there's a few top surgeons, and pretty much everybody wants to go to these few people, because if you've got a lot of money and you're getting plastic surgery, you'd want to go to the best. And so a lot of those people are in Beverly Hills. I mean, there's a few other places that have great plastic surgeons, but Beverly Hills is one of the top spots for it. So I worked with all these premier plastic surgeons, and we were taking care of, actors and actresses and these Instagram people and influencers and everything else. And it was a great experience, actually. And, I'll tell you one thing. When you're with someone and they're on the table there and they've got, those surgical gowns, those ones, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter. You could be the neighbor across the way, or you could be someone with 10 million followers. Everybody's kind of the same. We're all people, and everybody, everybody's kind of nervous. And I think in that moment, it's actually kind of a nice time to be with people, because you could actually really comfort them, and their Twitter feed doesn't comfort them, but you could make them feel better about things.
Yeah, you talk about having actors and actresses and influencers, and I think we forgot to mention YouTubers as well too. They're part of the celebrities nowadays. And who are some of the more famous that you've worked on?
Well, I can't name any names, because that wouldn't be right. But
All right, that's
I
fine.
will tell you that there's a lot more men there than you would think. You tend to
Really?
think of plastic surgery as mostly women, but it turned out that there are a lot of men. And you know, eh, what the men have discovered is that it's easier to get liposuction, like full body liposuction, or even to get like pec implants
Hmm.
or butt implants. It's easier to do that than it is to live at the gym. So if you're a successful,
Are you serious? Oh my gosh! I think
yes.
you just put the gym. I think you just put a lot of these gyms and memberships out of business right there.
So
But a
here's the
good
thing.
thing.
So a lot of people, like, they're wearing nice clothes, like, sport coats, like the men, for example, button down shirts, polos, things like that. And they want to look good in it. And so you could either spend years at the gym, or if you have a lucky break, you go to the plastic surgeon and next week you look great.
Wow, that is something. Maybe I'll forget the gym and come to you guys as well too. I think I'm gonna look like the Rock or something. So
You can, it's all there.
oh, yes, and of course, we'll, talk about, how we can, get you over there too, and, and of course, we had talked about, some of the foods that keep you young, and, people like yourself, we'll talk more about that, but first, listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, check out the latest novel by well-known award-winning author Mia Motion Zia of No Time for Love, called Missing, an extraordinary relationship between two ordinary people based on real-life events that go through 4 countries, 2 strangers, and 1 target, where truth is an illusion and the ones you love will be the first to go missing. Check out the book on Amazon and other retailers, available on all formats today. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com and over 30 podcast platforms, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, and Apple. Coming soon to Podbean, Buzzsprout, TuneIn, and Pandora. And also heard worldwide on Geo7, Radio Public, Himalaya, PCA, Shopbox, and more. Take the Mike Wagner Show on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel, and follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with award-winning physician, speaker, author, and the book Why Doctors Skip Breakfast: Wellness Tips to Reverse Aging, Treat Depression, and Get a Good Night's Sleep on the Mike Wagner Show. And let's talk about the book in just a minute. And what inspired you to start the book Why Doctors Skip Breakfast and more?
Well, I'll tell you, it's 2 things actually. One of them was, so I have a good childhood friend, and he's a radiation oncologist. So he's a doctor, and he takes care of people who have cancer and they need radiation to treat it. And he's the head of the department at a major hospital in Florida. And he was telling me a couple of years ago, there's this thing called anti-aging medicine,
Mm-hmm.
which I had never heard of before. And he's like, yeah, like we're finding out that we actually can do things, and it can control how fast we age, or can even slow aging down. And so I said, well, you're full of it. I didn't believe him, because you don't hear it. You figure if that's a thing, people will be talking about it. And he's like, no, seriously, this is a real thing. And there's hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of journal articles about it. If you look, you see, there's a lot of journal articles, you'd be surprised. So I looked, and it turned out it was a real thing, that there is this anti-aging medicine, and it's new. It's really just the last few years. And there's a lot of cool evidence for it. And we're kind of better understanding what causes you to age and how to slow it down. And so one of those things is fasting, daily intermittent fasting. There's different ways to do it. And so then after this conversation, I was at work, and I work at a major hospital. This is back when I was in the Bay Area, major hospital, great surgeons, everybody, trained at Harvard and MIT and all those places. And, we'd hang out before the surgery would start, so we'd all be there at like 6:30, 7 o'clock, and everybody pretty much would be drinking coffee, but almost no one would eat.
Really?
Very few of the people would eat. And these are people, anesthesiologists, surgeons, these are people that may be going into the operating room for a long procedure. Maybe they'll be there 6, 8 hours in a row, but almost none of them were eating before doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that's interesting, because but up until that time, I was like forcing myself to eat breakfast. I would make these smoothies, I'd cram, as much stuff in it as I could, and I would drink it. But then I realized that all these people knew more than I did, and they were already fasting, before I got on the scene. And then, so now I realize that a lot of doctors, not all of them, but a lot of doctors know about this, and we haven't been doing a very good job of communicating it to the general public.
Uh-huh. And of course, you talk about the fasting, and how does it improve your health, basically, when you fast? And how does it improve your health? And what are the methods to fasting? It's like, what's the process? How long does it take? And how to go about it? This is interesting.
Well, first, I should give the disclaimer that I always give. I'm not your doctor. I'm not a doctor of any of the people listening. So obviously, what I'm going to say is just general information. It may not necessarily apply to you specifically. And there may be something about your medical condition that might make this bad advice. So obviously, I'm going to recommend if you want to do this, you should speak to your doctor first. Having said that,
That's understood, but go ahead. I
with
mean,
that out of the way, so there's a few reasons we think fasting is good for you. One of them is that we think it's anti-aging. And, the idea is that I like to give this analogy. Your body, we have these things called longevity genes or fountain of youth genes, if you will. And this is one of those recent discoveries. This is one of those things we just discovered a few years ago. And these genes help fix your body and fix your DNA and fix your cells when they're damaged. And it turns out we all have these. You have them, I have them. But the more active they are, the busier these genes are, the better, because they cleanse the bad stuff from your body and they kind of turn back the clock on how old your cells are, believe it or not.
interesting.
And this is like one of these recent discoveries. And so the thing is that, so what you want to do when you eat and when you exercise, and when it turns out even meditation and things can actually stimulate these fountain of youth genes.
Hmm.
And so one of the ways to do it, one of the best ways we think, is with intermittent fasting. And the idea is that you want to put yourself under a little bit of stress. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of stress where you have a nasty boss at work or you have an abusive spouse. That's not a good kind of stress.
Right.
But if you have a little bit of a good kind of stress, it turns out that kicks these genes on, and then that's what kind of rolls back the clock and helps rejuvenate your cells. And there's lots of good research on this, and it really seems to work. So that's one of the things. And the other things it does is that for many people, it causes weight loss. So I'll tell you, I have a patient, and she was around 70 pounds overweight, wonderful person, very hardworking, brilliant lady. But she was overweight, and she tried diet after diet after diet. And, she tried keto and low carb and high carb and vegan, and you name it, she tried it. Nothing worked. But then she tried intermittent fasting, and she lost a lot of weight. It was the only diet that successfully made her lose weight, and she's kept the weight off.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. And I see this and hear it all the time. And so it may not seem this way, and I actually wouldn't have guessed this, to be honest with you, myself, but this is what is true for most people. It turns out it's easier to restrict when you eat than it is to restrict what you eat.
That is interesting. It's mainly when you eat, but not what you eat. That's interesting.
I mean, obviously what you eat is important also, but if your goal, let's say, is to lose weight, you might have an easier time losing weight if you just agreed to limit when you eat to certain hours than if you promised being, to cut out, junk food and all these other things. Because the thing is, most people, they could kind of distract themselves and wait until it's time to eat and stuff like that. And there's some good ways to do this. But usually when people are eating, once you're in the refrigerator, once you're at the restaurant, once you're in the grocery store, it's hard to say no to foods that you like.
That's very true.
If you love ice cream or something like that, it's easy for me to walk in and just say, hey, stop eating ice cream. You're going to have a hard time doing it. But if I tell you only eat the ice cream between these hours, you could probably do that.
Huh. Between hours. That's interesting. So in other words, it's not your typical breakfast, lunch, dinner. Like, say you eat breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 5. So it can be like maybe breakfast at 10, or maybe lunch at 2, or maybe dinner time, maybe like 8 at night or 4 in the afternoon. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, so there's different ways of fasting, and this was a good question you asked, how do you do it? So there's different ways. The most common way, and the way I recommend, and I do this myself, it's called the 16-8 or 18-6 fast. And the idea is that you only eat during, say, a 6 to 8 hour window of the day. And that's the only time you eat food. You can drink water and have black coffee whenever you want, but food or things with calories. So for example, let's say the first meal you have, let's say, is at noon. Let's say you don't eat, you skip breakfast, which is where the book title comes from. You skip breakfast and you have lunch at noon, okay? And then you stop eating dinner at 8 p.m. as an example. Or you could do it whatever time works for your life. We all have different lives, and what works for you may not work for me in timing. But let's say you have lunch you start having lunch at noon and you finish dinner at 8, which is a very doable thing for most people. What you've done is you've limited your eating to just an 8-hour period of time from noon to 8 p.m. The rest of the day, from 8 p.m. until you go to bed, you don't eat any calories, and then you're sleeping, so you're not eating then. And then you just hold off on eating again until noon the following day. So if you do that, you fasted for 16 hours.
Wow.
And now in the morning, you could drink water, you could drink black coffee, which I love. You could drink tea or herbal tea. You know what? Yeah, very good. You could have, excellent. You could have, one thing I love are those sparkling waters like LaCroix or bubbly. You could have those things.
Oh, yeah. I love the berry ones too. I mean, lime, lemon. Oh, they're amazing.
Yeah, they are. And they have no calories and they're not bad for you. So, if you're committed to doing it, there's some easy ways to do it. But if you do that, if I told you, I just want you eating from 12 to 8 or whatever works in your schedule, you could probably do it. And it's easier than you think. And if you do it, you're almost certainly going to lose weight.
And of course, we talked about coffee earlier as well, too. And how can that make you healthy and more successful, which I'm doing right now. So I'm having some as we speak.
I know you're making me jealous. I'm watching you.
I'm
For
not
those listening, I'm watching you drink this coffee, and I don't have it. So it turns out, coffee got like a bad rap. Years ago, everybody thought, well, maybe it raises your blood pressure or causes these different things. And we know that coffee, there's been a lot of research now on coffee. And we know that coffee makes you live longer. Like it seems pretty clear. People that drink coffee live longer. And it also seems to reduce the risk of a number of things, including heart disease. It probably reduces the risk of strokes. It improves athletic performance if you're smart about when you do it. It fights depression. It reduces your risk of suicide. And it probably helps protect you against brain diseases like Alzheimer's disease. So coffee is one of the best things. And the only thing about coffee, though, that's important, the two things. The coffee is the good stuff. It's not like the sugary garbage you add to it. So
right, exactly. Like you go to Starbucks, Caribou, or go to your local gas station, you get a typical portion of your sugar, your
yes,
cream, or chocolate, French vanilla, whatever it is. So I mean that type. So
don't be running off to Starbucks and have a huge frappuccino and say Dr. Greg said it was okay, because
no. Let them do that. That's their problem. I've got a coffee pot back there. I'm fine with it.
That's all you need. That's all you need. And the other thing, everybody's different, but I always recommend people be careful about having an afternoon, because it could interfere with your sleep. Everybody has different tolerance. But other than that, coffee is good stuff.
And of course, you talk about coffee and whatever else you say about sleep that comes into play. And how can you sleep better at night?
So this is actually one of my big things, and it's in the book, Why Doctors Skip Breakfast. We have a whole section on sleep. And it turns out that, I think one of the big problems we have in today's society is we almost wear not sleeping as a badge of honor. You see all these people and they're running around, they're like, man, I only slept 4 hours last night, because I'm so dedicated to work or whatever. And I tell you, you're doing yourself a disservice when you're not getting enough sleep. We know that when you don't get enough sleep, you die sooner. You're more likely to get cancer, more likely to get heart disease. You're more likely to get Alzheimer's disease. You're much more likely to get in a car accident. It's even funny, they found when bosses don't get enough sleep, their employees don't like them as much.
Isn't that the truth? I mean,
Yeah.
I've been in corporate for God knows how long. I've been in every scenario possible, and I'm sure the listeners have been through the same thing. Sorry, bosses, we don't mean to offend you, but
Yeah, who wants a grumpy boss? And you're grumpy when you don't get enough sleep. So there are some great tips actually about sleeping. And the big thing is, first of all, almost everybody needs 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, I only need 5. But I'm telling you, probably less than 0.5% of people or something need that much. Almost everybody needs 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Some people need even more. So the big thing is make sure that you're getting that. But the other thing is, there's some tips, there's some special things you could do to make your sleep quality better. And one that's surprising, and I actually, I'll be honest with you, I don't always follow this myself, but one of the best tips is actually to sleep in a cold room. And
Really?
there's good research on this, and it's, I'm talking like probably between 65 and 68 degrees.
Hmm.
Now, I don't personally like to do that too much, so I probably cheat it up to like 70 or something. But if you could tolerate it, a cold room, you actually sleep better. And then, a dark room, there's other tips. Like you want to kind of go to bed and get up at the same time every day is
Uh-huh.
an important one, because you want to train your body to do this. And you don't want to, people talk about like phones and computers before bed. It's probably a bad idea to, be using that stuff, close to bedtime.
Hmm.
And there's even a cool thing. I haven't tried this personally, but a lot of people are talking about this, about changing the lights in your bedroom to red lights.
Red lights, really?
Yeah.
What's up with that? That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. And so, it turns out that certain colors of light are more stimulating than others. I don't know if you have these LED lights that are very bluish white. Those are very like harsh, and I don't like those lights at all. And I've got a couple of them in my house, and I really like try to keep them off because they're just really stimulating and I don't like it. So
Why
most of
just
my lights
put
are
them
yellow.
yet?
Do you have those in your office?
Actually, I've got the ones that are pretty much standard from way back when, and I'm having a little difficulty trying to get the lights. Let's see, I'm trying to move this around. Okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah, it looks like my camera is not being very
Oh,
cooperative.
good. Now I see it. Yeah.
It's those long tubes, from back in the day, if this gives you any idea. So okay. All right. So are you still with us?
Yes, sir.
All right, yeah, I had to change things around, and I guess my computer doesn't like it moving around. It's like, do I really have to look at these lights here?
I know the computer. See, the computer doesn't even like the light. But so I've switched to kind of yellow lights. They call them now. It's funny. They call them Edison light bulbs. If you go to the store, they got a filament.
Oh yes, we still have those in our house too. It's just like with the ones with the ceiling fans and everything else. It's like, we still have the classic ones, and most places like, the hardware stores, Menards, Lowe's, Ace, True Value, or even like a regional chain in California, Texas, wherever you are, they actually still sell them, but they're trying to get rid of them, what, like 50 cents or something like each, maybe like a buck for like maybe an 8-pack. It's like they're trying to get rid of them.
Right. And I think for your eyes, they're actually pretty good. So I try to use those whenever I can. But now there's this movement towards red light. But the idea though is, before bed, you just don't want to flood your eyes with a bunch of light. You think your ancestors, they were going to bed in darkness. So we weren't designed to be in a lot of light before bedtime. And that's an easy thing that we could control.
Mhm. And then you talk about the color of LED lights. The blue lights are very distracting. The red lights are the thing. Those LED clocks that you see, like the alarm clocks, they're still kind of like an orange. It's like, is that still effective or no?
Yeah, I think that's fine. It's the bluish white light that's probably the worst. But the other thing is the brightness. So, and I think most of us do this intuitively. But when you're getting ready for bed, you want to like use as few lights as you can. I would turn off as many lights as you can. Like I have a very little light in my bedroom, like a small, tiny light that makes as just about all you need to see and nothing more. So, I think it's worth having something like that, because if your bedroom just has like those huge overhead lights, you're blowing yourself away right before bed. I don't think that's helping your sleep.
And I think that's a really good idea. And sometimes with those Edison lights, you can also unscrew how many and just keep it as one. And that's also a good way to save on electricity bill. It's not just getting a good quality sleep, but saving money at the same time.
Right. Right. That's right.
And, and of course, another point too is that the whole issue about people not getting to sleep is snoring. It's like, what should you do if you snore?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because that's actually a big issue for me. And so if you snore, you may have something called obstructive sleep apnea. And what that means is your throat, your airway may be closing off partly while you're sleeping. And so while you're sleeping at night, you're kind of gasping for air, you're struggling for air. And so the sound you're hearing is air kind of trying to sneak its way around the back of your tongue and the back of your throat. So if you snore at night, and especially if you're tired during the day, I strongly recommend you go speak to your doctor about getting tested for sleep apnea. Because if you have it and you're not treating it, it's bad for you. You know, it could increase your risk of early death, of heart disease, and Alzheimer's again. And so it's worth treating. And there are some things you could do to treat it if you have it. One of them is, if you're overweight, losing weight will often help.
Mm-hmm.
How you sleep helps in terms of how you lie in bed. For most people, if you lie left side down, you know, like the fetal position with your left side down, for most people, that's the best airway position, meaning you breathe the best, you snore the least. For some people, lying on their stomach is the best. But for everybody, lying on your back is the worst for breathing. So, you know, there's a cool trick you can do. If you snore and you lie on your back, if that's just the way you sleep, try to train yourself, and you could do this, to sleep some other way. And one thing you could do is, you can buy pajamas, or you could make this yourself, where you sew a tennis ball into the back of your pajama. And so when you go on your back, you're lying on a tennis ball, and you don't want to do that. So you turn over, and you can train yourself to sleep in a different position. If those things don't work, there's something called CPAP, which is like a mask that fits on your face or nose, and it blows air into you when you're sleeping.
Uh-huh. And also, you talked about laying on your back for those with sleep apnea. What about sleeping on your side? Would that work as well?
Sleeping on your side, for some people, that will cure it, especially on your left side. For some people, sleeping on your left side will cure your sleep apnea, but not everybody. This is one of those things, if you have a partner in bed, you know, you ask them, you say, hey, you know, if you hear me snoring, if I wake you up snoring, remember how I'm lying. You know, and they may tell you, oh, we're always snoring when you're on your back and you never snore on your side. You know, that information is useful, because if that's the case, all you have to do is train yourself not to sleep on your back. So your partner could really help you there.
Mm-hmm. And also too that also improves performance as well. It can also the more sleep you have, it also just lessens your depression as well too. That's pretty much linked to sleep and depression.
And depression is a very big problem right now. You know, we're seeing kind of an explosion of it, to be honest with you. I think, you know, we've got we've got economic anxiety. A lot of people had stress over politics. People are worrying about losing their jobs or their homes. You're worried about COVID. You know, maybe a neighbor has COVID, and so people are under a lot of stress. And then we've lost our support system in many ways. You know, it used to be that if you were having a bad day, you could either go to your therapist's office, or you could go to your best friend's house, or you could have your parents over or something. And now it's hard to do that. And we're living more isolated lives. And for many people, that really causes depression.
Mm-hmm. And of course, there's many people give like their ideas of depression. And what are some ways you could also beat depression from your perspective?
Well, one of my things that I recommend is, there's something called telemedicine. And so I do telemedicine. I touch on depression a little bit, but not to have a conflict of interest. A lot of therapists now, like psychiatrists, psychologists, family therapists, a lot of them do telemedicine. And what that means is that you could see a counselor or therapist from your living room. You could have your pajamas on, and you can and be on your couch and speak to your therapist. And you don't have to leave the house. You don't have to deal with parking. You don't have to worry about COVID, but you could still talk to someone who's trained to help you. So what I recommend, if you think that you may be depressed, is either talk to your doctor, or go and do a Google search, because there's a few different easy ways of finding online therapists, and there are platforms and things that allow you to do this in a very safe way. And you could speak to a therapist from home.
That is amazing. And of course, it's in a safe spot. And of course, you can also talk to your loved ones, your spouse, or best friends, group, and everything else. And of course, there's also some things you touched on as well, too, like with therapies, things at home and everything else. And of course, with also the technology, you also got the therapies like ketamine therapy, melatonin, and cryo, and also especially vitamins. And I think we haven't touched that yet, but why is that so important?
Well, so, it's interesting that it turns out that there are a lot of, let me just again say, I'm not your doctor, and I cannot make any recommendations for any particular person what they should do for depression, other than that you should speak to a therapist if you think you may be depressed. But I will tell you that there are a number of ways that you could treat depression that sometimes, for some people, could be better than antidepressant pills. It turns out that if you eat a healthy diet, and by that I mean a largely plant-based diet with a lot of vegetables, and you cut out a lot of garbage, like a lot of animal proteins and a lot of sugar, and if you drink coffee, it turns out that for many people that actually really does cut down on depression, and it works pretty well. If you're not getting enough sleep, getting the proper amount of sleep can really cut down on depression. Exercise, for many people, exercise can really cut down on depression.
Hmm.
But also, like you were saying, social connectedness is a big one for depression. And so, one thing I recommend, and for people listening, I hope if you don't remember anything else from our conversation, I hope you remember this. If there's a friend or family member that you haven't heard from in a while, check on them. Because there's a lot of people that are holed up in their homes. They may not be going out that much. Maybe they're ordering their groceries in, they're not doing anything. And you don't hear from them. You think everything's fine, but they're not. They're not fine. And when you check on them and you see how they're doing, that could make a huge difference for people. So, this is a gift that we could give. I think, we can give anyone we know. If there are people you haven't heard from in a while, check on them and make sure that they're okay.
Hmm. And of course, most importantly, a phone call away. That's the most important thing.
Right. That's right.
Right.
And you had asked about ketamine. I do want to say, so ketamine is a drug, and we use it in the operating room. It's an anesthesia drug. But it turns out that ketamine is a very, very good antidepressant if used properly by people trained to use it.
Hmm.
And so for some people, if you have people listening to the show, if you've tried other antidepressants, Prozac or other things, and they haven't helped you, it may be that ketamine will. And so there's always other options. And I want to kind of give people this sort of sense of hope that there's always other things you could do. And one of those, if you're someone with depression, is ketamine. So I would recommend, if you're listening to this show or watching it and you have depression and you've had difficulty with other treatments, I would recommend asking your doctor whether ketamine would be an option for you.
Hmm. Correct. And I think that's very important as well, too. And the one thing we talked about, we were going to touch on, and the most important thing before I forget, what we talk about food a lot, our favorite foods, and when it comes to diets and everything. And what are some of the foods that keep you young? And what are some of the ones that cause you to age? And what are some of the foods that, get you in depression? And what are some of the foods that get you out of depression?
Right. So I think in terms of bad foods, it's more fun to talk about the bad stuff. Bad foods, probably one of the worst is sugar or sugary type foods. Like candy bars, sodas, especially juices are very sugary. Sugary drinks are probably the worst types of food in general. But really, any kind of sugary food. The trouble is that what it does is it causes your blood sugar to shoot up, and then when your blood sugar goes up, you have a hormone called insulin, and insulin is how your body kind of tries to vacuum the sugar out of your blood. It causes that to go up. And eventually your body kind of gets desensitized to insulin. Like, let's say you're someone who drinks wine every day. With time, you get a little desensitized to it. You need to have more wine to get the same buzz. Insulin's the same way. If you're always eating sugary garbage and you're always getting all this insulin, you get desensitized to it. And that could lead to diabetes. It leads to aging for a variety of ways. And it's bad news. So one of the big things I recommend is avoiding sugary things as much as possible, particularly sugary drinks.
Hmm.
The other thing that we know is very bad are processed meats. So I really try to discourage people from eating things like beef jerky, ham, salami, stuff like that. Processed meats are very bad.
Hmm.
On the good side, I try not to have too many, bad stuff, because it's easy to just say don't do things. But on the plus side, the most evidence we have for healthy diets comes from eating something called a whole food plant-based diet. So the idea is, and very few people could actually do this perfectly, and you don't have to do it perfectly. That's the beauty. You just try to get as close to it as possible. And so the way you do it is you want to have your food be as whole as possible. And what that means is it's not really processed. So you're eating, say, a baked potato, which would be an unprocessed potato, instead of potato chips, which are
Right. Yeah.
processed.
Right.
Right.
So basically, it's just like a potato you get from a garden, potato you get from a store, or a
Right.
veggie stand. You can just, you can cut it up, boil it, eat it whole, or put in a microwave, oven. That type of potato. We do that a lot, and it's really good.
Right. Right. And this, so you want your food to be as close to the way nature prepares it as possible. And so, if you're better off, like even with like oatmeal, for example. I like oatmeal. You want to have, like, as much as possible, like whole oats, rather than, say, oat flour in a bread or something. The whole oat is healthier for you. It's got the fiber, it's got the extra nutrients. So one is you want whole foods. So you want it to be as close to nature as possible. But the other one is you want to be as plant-based as possible. So for most people, we get much more protein than we need. When you're eating steak and you're eating all these chicken breasts and everything, unless you're an athlete or you're a kid, you're probably getting much more protein than you need. And that isn't good for you. And that ages you, actually.
Really?
So you want as much of your food to be a plant as possible. So the more vegetables you could eat, the more legumes you could eat, like lentils, beans, that type of thing, even whole grains. I think a lot of people, they're running around and they're saying that you should be avoiding bread and stuff like that. And I think if you're able to get whole grains, there's pretty good evidence that actually fights cancer and is good for you. So if you need something to kick out of your diet, I would try to kick out as much sugary stuff as you can and as many processed meats as you can. And I wouldn't worry too much about eating whole grains. Now,
Mhm.
I'm not saying I would eat white bread, because it is plant-based, but it's very, very processed. But oatmeal, that type of stuff is very good.
And of course, you talk about plant-based. I also think of grass-fed beef too. That's been the big thing, and it's getting more common these days and very popular, grass-fed. And I remember back in, I'm dating myself. It's like grass-fed was the only way to go, and then all of a sudden you had the chemicals kick in, process, and then grass-fed is making a comeback.
I agree. And so if you eat meat, then I totally agree with you. I would try, if you're eating beef, I would try to eat grass-fed beef for sure. It's not only, I think, more humane for the animals, but it's also better for you, because it turns out that the fat that's in grass-fed beef is different than the fat that's in, say, corn-fed beef in a factory. And the grass-fed fat is healthier for you. So if you're going to eat meat, I strongly recommend grass-fed. If you're going to eat eggs, I strongly recommend you get pasture-raised chickens. And again, those chickens are healthier, and those chickens are eating a normal chicken diet. So they're eating bugs and they're eating other things that should be on a chicken's diet. And so the eggs are healthier, and it's much more humane for the chicken. So it's better for you, better for them.
Interesting. I think I'll raise some chickens and they can get rid of some of bugs for us. That'd be a great idea. I love it.
If you could have your own chickens, I would say do it. Yeah, exactly. And they're cute, actually. They're good pets.
And they fight depression as well too. So they're just cute. Yeah. especially the little chicks.
They are very cute. I tell you, I've never had a chicken, but if I had the yard for it, I would be all over that.
And I encourage everybody to get chickens today, fight depression. They're very cute. We're here with Dr. Gregory Charlop of the book, Why Doctors Skip Breakfast, Wellness Tips to Reverse Aging, Treat Depression, Get a Good Night's Sleep on the Mike Wagner Show. Dr. Gregory, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot from you. Looking forward to having you again soon. And just a couple of things here. We'd love to have you back in 2021 and beyond. And what can we expect from you in 2021 as well?
So the big thing I'm working on now is I have a lot of athletes as patients, and I'm coming up with a book that's designed to help retired athletes or kind of weekend warriors. And it's specifically tailored towards middle-aged people who want to stay in shape, and they kind of know they've lost a little bit of the edge they had before. So it goes all into what foods they should eat, what supplements to take. It touches on exercise and gratitude and sleep and a lot of the things we discussed. And it's geared specifically towards middle-aged, weekend warriors and retired athletes. So that'll be out soon. I'm very excited about that.
And we're certainly looking forward to that, Dr. Gregory. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
I really like, this has nothing to do with medicine, I guess, but I really like Tim Ferriss. He wrote The 4-Hour Work Week, and that book was a big influence on me. I think in medicine, we all go down this track. Everybody in medicine, you worked hard in high school to get to college. You worked hard in college to get to medical school. You worked hard in medical school to get to residency, and then you work hard through your whole life in this one kind of linear career path. And it's very hard to break out of that. And so what he did for me is he almost gave me, I never met him, but he almost gave me permission. And for anyone who hasn't read this book, I really recommend reading The 4-Hour Work Week. He almost gave me permission to say, look, you could do what you want, like try other things. You don't need to just follow this path that's set before you. Experiment, try different ideas. Like life is short, and you should kind of not just be pigeonholed into some kind of career. So I would say Tim Ferriss and The 4-Hour Work Week, oddly enough, was probably one of the most influential things I read.
That's very interesting. I guess bankers' hours take on a different meaning these days. So, and what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point, Dr. Gregory?
Well, for younger people, my best advice is that you should travel or move different places when you're young. And I work with students and trainees sometimes, and I always tell them this. It's the older you get. I mean, I just made a big move from California to Texas, but the truth is, the older you are, the harder it is to move. Maybe once you're retired, it's different, but once you have a house and a mortgage and you've got a job or you've got kids in school, it's hard to move. And I think you get a lot out of living in different places. And you and I, we talked about this before the show, that you've lived in a number of different places, and you could tell me, but I think if you could live in different places, it just adds so much to your life and your experience, and you see the world in a better way.
And of course, visiting, oh, visiting wouldn't hurt either. So that's a good thing too. So
Right.
exactly. Once again, Dr. Gregory Charlop here on the Mike Wagner Show. A very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely great. Looking forward to having you again soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. Love you back on in 2021 and beyond. And once again, tell us what are your upcoming projects, what's your website, how do people contact you, where can people check out your book?
So the book, Why Doctors Skip Breakfast, you can get from Amazon. It's available in paperback or Kindle. You could also get it from Audible if you're an audio listener like I am. I like most of my books that way. You can get Why Doctors Skip Breakfast there. If you want to contact me, I'm active on LinkedIn, and my name is Gregory Charlop, Charlop. I'm on Facebook, but LinkedIn is better. I'm getting in YouTube, and it's actually a lot of fun. And so I'm happy you mentioned on YouTube, because it's totally new to me, and I like it. I've got the green screen. I'm getting into the whole thing. So I'm on YouTube now. You could look for Gregory Charlop Wellness MD, or I have a website, GregoryCharlopMD.com.
And don't forget to subscribe to his channel too. So do that. Once again, Dr. Gregory, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely great. Looking forward to having you soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. Love you back on in 2021 and beyond. And don't forget to keep in touch, and let's have some coffee one day and come out.
Cheers.
Cheers.